basically, it's the same concept. The e-kiosks, the self-bag drop. Eventually, what we want and what we envision, just like what Javed said, is eventually you will have a scenario where security and processes and controls are practically invisible for the passenger because of technology. Again, we don't know, I personally do not know in how many years we'll be able to achieve that kind of system or process, but I think with the current trend of airports and the demands of some airlines to provide the passenger with that kind of experience, I think we are going to achieve that sooner than later. That's the way I see it.
Very good, thank you. Anything to add, Mr. Madani?
Thank you. It's quite interesting for us when we try to implement new technology to provide, to enhance service in our airport. We are facing a security problem. When you come to Jakarta, you can see in Terminal 1 there are 2 screening checkpoints. First, when you want to enter the terminal to the check-in area, and at the end when you want to enter the boarding lounge. We still use that concept in Terminal 2 also. In our new airport in Kuala Lumpur, we already put the concept just one single check-in point when you enter the boarding house. But how we can make sure that people who enter the check-in area is clearly intended passenger or any other kind of people who try to make maybe even a business in there as a like middleman to get a ticket and everything, something like that, especially in outside of Jakarta. So in our terminal, the new terminal 3, we will install like a passenger profile CCTV to profiling every people who enter our terminal. We will also install new baggage handling system because we are last year OAG in analysis of OAG we are the top mega hub in the region, Asia Pacific region. So we need to provide seamless connectivity for our passengers in Jakarta, especially for domestic, because more than 55% our passenger is low-cost carrier passengers. We need to make them very seamless to go to other part of Indonesia. We also implement like geotagging, something like that, to Wi-Fi tagging to know where the passenger traveling around in our train terminal to support our non-aeronautical activities and many kind of things. So that's a few examples that we are going to do in Jakarta.
Just wanted to add, I think it's not about the technology, but I really don't believe you should be worrying about what technology enables the experience, because that will just keep coming. I think we've got to focus on the legislation and the data. You've heard yesterday and you'll hear for several years to go, who owns the customer? Ultimately, the customer, has his or her data. It is their data, it is their information. But we need to get to some form of collaborative sharing of this information to make the journey work for the customer. And of course, customers don't want to be, none of us want to be flooded with 60 SMSs or messages on Facebook or on Instagram, on Twitter from everybody. But we need them to be meaningful. You can only make them meaningful in today's airports if you understand the journey together and you share the information and agree collaboratively when you should interact with the customer and who should interact. So for an airline to necessarily believe it's their data and for an airport to believe it's their data and not bring that data together, I think we're not really as an ecosystem then providing the customer experience. So for us it's about the effort on understanding the customer from the data perspective, getting the data somehow together. I'll give you an example. An airline, we're installing beacons as many airports around the world are. And you can do so much with beacon technology. But if they're on the infrastructure of the airport, then if there is no understanding agreement, how would the airline get access to that? How would a media company get access to that information? Because the airport's paying for it, the airport's fitting it. And yet the data is useful to the airline, it's useful to the ground handling companies, it's useful to the airports. But the customer may belong to the airline from a perception perspective. So I think for me, it's not the technologies that say tomorrow, it's Bluetooth today, it could be Grade 2 for tomorrow, it could be whatever it's called. Focus on the actual experience.
Excellent points, and if I may point out, in the United States, one of the things that we've suffered from, I think, is that the airports really don't have information coming in on who the passengers are. That information lives almost entirely within the realm of the airlines, and that may have been some of a missed opportunity from our perspective. So this is very interesting dialogue for me to hear, particularly because I think what I'm hearing you say is it's about two-way information that can be useful to airports and airlines and other stakeholders if they're willing to share it and function in a partnership kind of arrangement. Is that a fair summary? So again, excellent points. And the other thing I do want to hastily point out is I think you've really amplified the point that every minute that a passenger spends either on the road or in a queue for security or for check-in is a minute when they can't then be spending or doing things that will help them to maximize the quality of their travel experience. Again, fair summary? Okay. So I am curious, what other changes do you see in terms of airline business practices that are creating either pressures or opportunities for airports to do things differently beyond what you've already spoken about?
So we've got our number one customer in terms of volume is Indigo. Fantastic airline in India, really great on punctuality and totally technology enabled. But that brings us a real challenge. We have about 19 million passengers through our airport in a year. It's about 60,000 passengers in a day. And in our morning peak, about 6,500 passengers in about 90 minutes. It's a huge number in a very short period of time. 80% of those are Indigo passengers who now Indigo have enabled full online mobile boarding checked in. So every passenger is automatically checked in and the boarding card is sent to their mobile phone. Fantastic for the customer as an experience. But regulations require, as to enter the building, you've got to show a ticket and a valid legal document to the security forces to enter in India. So they're not used to reading mobile phones. So that becomes a challenge in terms of trying to find readers and technologies and or teaching a security guard, of which I have 1,800 in Bangalore airport, who move every 2 years. Imagine the logistics of trying to train that. But those passengers then have to go back to check-in to a self-service machine to reprint a paper boarding pass. And so 80% of these sort of 4,500 passengers all turn up to a check-in desk that don't need to be a check-in. Most of those don't have bags to check in, they just have hands. They go to security and there is a stamping in India of your bag tag and your boarding pass, an ink stamp. And the guard has to stamp on ink that you've just gone through a security point. So the mobile phone, it was funny because when we actually first when they went live, the security guard asked, where does he stamp on the phone? So it's, the mindset of moving regulators as well. So airlines bringing in technology is great. You can go to every conference and somebody will sell you a new solution, but the solution has to be able to...
The greatest challenge of the Clark Airport right now, not really in terms of airline technology, but rather in terms of government participation. What is the government's role? I think the government has to decide whether it will be regulator or operator. I don't think it can be both. There is an obvious conflict of interest once the government decides that it wants to own and operate the airport and at the same time be the regulating body. Because how will it expect an airport or a gateway to be profitable as a business concern? And yet it has to think of security, bilaterals, protect its national interest. That's where I think the greatest challenge that we in the Philippines are experiencing right now. And we're very optimistic because of the PPP, or the onset of the PPP. The government can finally decide that there are some utilities, there are some franchises, there are some businesses that should be left to the private sector and leave the regulation to government. But as a going business concern, which we all want airports to be, because at the end of the day, we think of the stakeholders, we think of the airlines, we think of the passenger. We would want them to have that experience not as the regulator, but rather as the primary gateway of a country. That's the greatest challenge, I believe.
Very good, and I'm glad you spoke to that, because that is something that many airports around the world grapple with. In the United States, our federal government does not own and operate airports, but state, county, and local governments do, and they work in a variety of different relationships with the private sector in a lot of different ways. So I think it's great that you've highlighted that. Mr. Madani.
Okay, thank you. Right now, the biggest challenge that we are facing is how to expand our capacity, especially in Jakarta Airport. Our Jakarta Airport capacity is 22 million passengers. Last year, at the end of 2013, we have 60 million passengers. 2014, we have 57 million passengers. Last year, 2015, to 54 million passengers, decreasing for the last 3 years. At the same time, we have to increase our capacity, building new terminal, refurbish the old terminal. The question how we do it without disrupting the current operation. Not only the terminal, like I said before, the accessibility also. The infrastructure, the water pumping, the water, fresh water, and one interesting also the fuel line, because the fuel line installed in 1980 something, at the beginning 1983 I guess. So right now we have to test the new line, the fuel line. That's also our biggest challenge. At the same time, this year also, last year, our government already gave us money to build a new runway, the third runway, on the north part of our airport. But the land is already occupied by private sector and everything. It's not easy also for us. We need support from local government, from the Ministry of Transportation. Right now also we are doing like PPP project. We have a plan to build new airports, more or less same size like Soekarno-Hatta, and it has distance around 158 kilometers from Jakarta. It's western part of Java. But like our friend from Philippines said, the role of government must be clear. Ministry of Transport is a operator or a regulator. They have to clearly define themselves. They cannot do as an operator and also as a regulator. That's why our PPP project in Indonesia is not working so well, because it is in an early stage. It's in an early stage. Usually the issue is about the sovereignty and everything, and about the legal issue and everything. That's why that's two issues is the biggest challenge that we are facing right now. First, the capacity, how to improve the capacity, and also the regulatory problem.
Excellent. And so if I may just sum up, part of what I'm hearing again is the value of thinking long-term, but at the same time preserving flexibility in the near term to evolve, for the airport to evolve as the needs and capabilities of the different stakeholders change. Is that a fair summary? And I will point out, we've suffered many of the same challenges in the United States. We have, if you look at our 30 busiest airports in the United States, only 6 of them have more aircraft operations today than they had 10 years ago. In other words, we're seeing increased concentration of activity in certain markets as the industry changes, and that's driving impacts and changes for what our airports need. Now, Mr. Madani and Mr. Tanjuatco have both spoken to the biggest challenges facing the airports. Javed, is there anything you'd like to add to that before we open it up to the audience?
I think for us it's really, we're blessed with having lots of land, not having any residents on our land. That's one of the lucky places, I suppose, a very, very rare position to be. But what we're not blessed with is having the regulatory approvals come in a haste period. So the approval processes to get certification or to kick off projects can take several years. Not for the same reasons that the West suffers from when it comes to environmental clearances or lobby groups or residents, where there are greater challenges. I think we just have the slow tape of government not really work to the pace as a commercial organisation needs to. So for me, it's just around if there was some simplification, and the Indian government is actually working very hard on that in terms of putting systems and e-technologies for licensing of airports and to license permissions. But that project is 2 years old, and it hasn't yet come live. So that's 2 years lost of a airport terminal build, which is critical timescales. So a similar way, the regulator, we're a successful PPP. The model has evolved over the last 8-9 years. So I think that worked. We've demonstrated it in the 6 metro airports of India. Just look at the quality of them when you come through there. But the regulators have not moved up a gear with us at this point.
Very good. And in the United States, we too have had to make changes in our regulatory approval processes in order to streamline environmental reviews and associated approvals, because capital projects can be very ephemeral. They have to move quickly in order to strike while the iron is hot, or else the stakeholders, the airlines, may choose to go elsewhere. And that's been an important issue for us. So we have just a couple of minutes available, so I'd like to ask if there are any questions from the audience for our distinguished panel. And of course, I can't see anything because the spotlights are so bright. Anything we've not covered? Oh, I see a hand here.
Thank you, gentlemen. I just have a question, probably relating to the region where we come from, where I'm from Fiji. You mentioned about working together, collaborating with airlines. From an airport's perspective, do you see the need for an airport to actually be in partnership with, say, a major airline? It doesn't have to be the airlines. I'm thinking about the Heathrows. They have a success story, but geographically everyone is different. When you're blessed with land, you have a different issue, probably similar to ours. But do you see the need for airports today to partner with airlines?
Yes, I do, absolutely. I suppose I take that approach because I spent 12 years working for an airline, and the last 3 years working for a major airline in the Middle East, and then 6 years working for ground handlers. So a bit of a unique rare breed that's sort of gone around the whole circle of the industry, and understanding those perspectives. So when I talk about that, I understand it from all sides of the fence. What we've done in Bangalore is we've partnered with an airline and made them our base home carrier. We call them our home carrier. So AirAsia, for example, India, is our home carrier. They get additional services and benefits of partnering. And what that means in this case is that they have to position their aircraft on our base as a hub, whilst they may be headquartered somewhere else. All of their aircraft come and stay with us overnight. They start their journey from us and they end their journey. Through that process, we partner with them for things like the customer experience, the sort of services that they might need for their customer. And we have a commercial mechanism that allows them to do that, that's at a preferential rate to others. What it means is they've got to guarantee us a number of customers, passengers per year. So absolutely, I think there is real room for doing the partnership. You don't have to be a state-owned organisation, whether it be an airport or an airline, to be able to connect yourself fully. There are other ways to do that.
Very good. I know that we're running over. We've got a little warning clock here. Mr. Tanjuatco, any last words to add? Mr. Madani, I know you're going to be doing a longer presentation next, but is there anything you want to say at the moment?
I think we are all agree that we are airport must collaborate with airline. Especially if you want to be a successful airport, you must have an airline to make a home base in your airport. In our new terminal, Terminal 3, it will be used as a gateway for SkyTeam airline because Garuda already a member of SkyTeam. They are 5-star airline right now, so they will bring all the passengers from SkyTeam airline to Terminal 3 and will be dispersed to other part of Indonesia through Garuda network in domestic network.
And with that, that's actually a perfect segue into the next part of the session. But first, please join me in thanking our distinguished panelists for joining us today and sharing their perspectives.